69 actually begins on page 67. And these are all utility bills, but they're not labeled in any way. How do you know one from the other? How do we know we're being billed? We're not being double billed. There's no coding on any of these. And that goes for several other too, but this one has the most. There's 3 pages of them.
Mayor Kavanaugh, Councilmember Cavalier, the report before you is a summary of payments that have been made. With each payment, there is a detailed invoice which is reviewed and goes through an approval process to make sure that we receive the goods or services that are being paid for. Okay, those would include account numbers and where they're specifically charged. As it comes to you, it gets summarized and gets reported out by a combination of those variables.
I guess I expected something more than that because you have the accounting in 2 ways. One in summary, and then you put it in detail. And so I assumed that we would get it in detail. We'd have more detail than this.
There are different levels of detail. We have a further report that has more detail that's about 65 pages just by itself. And with that tells a little more of the story.
And I still haven't received my answer on the last communication on last council meeting when we had accounts payable.
Yes, that question on HDR, I forwarded an email from you from the project manager with the question as to were they within budget and were there any outstanding change orders, and I did forward that out to the City Council, but the answer is that they are within budget, and as it relates to the change orders, there were a couple of minor change orders that were added to that. I don't remember the exact dollar amounts, but both were added at our convenience. One was a soil testing that we needed to do it, and we did it through that contract.
And you sent that to us?
Yes, I sent. Yeah, I sent that by email to all of you a couple days after the meeting.
I will note, except me, I recused myself from that item. And
okay, yes.
I have not received.
Thank you.
Further discussion, comments on expenditures for December? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve them?
So moved.
I have a motion from Vice Mayor Antoniak, a second from Councilmember Souza. All those in favor signify by stating aye, please.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. I believe we do not have any communication this evening. Okay. We'll now move to citizen comments. Opportunity for any citizen to comment on any subject that is not on this evening's agenda.
Mayor, I have one speaker card here.
Okay.
Ann Mason.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to read most of this because I'm afraid I won't make my 3 minutes if I don't. Mr. Mayor and City Council members, I'd like to begin by congratulating you for the many forward-looking decisions you've made to bring the ever-expanding city of Goodyear into the 21st century. You chose to locate the new city center not in what is termed Old Goodyear, but in a fresh new location where city planners can construct a vibrant government and commercial center from scratch to meet the needs of our citizens. I've come here this evening to point out that Goodyear's sponsorship of a rodeo doesn't appear to be consistent with its apparent goal to become a player in the modern urban world. We now have new universities, an airport, baseball training facilities, and a few decent restaurants to draw people to Goodyear. A rodeo seems to be an anachronism. We're not about being Old West. We're heading into the future as an exciting modern city. As you know, Goodyear's proud past was as a cotton-growing region run by Goodyear Rubber. Most current citizens are urban transplants here to fill jobs in industry and retail, representing our vibrant future. Rodeos are cruel. Animals are often injured and killed. If dogs or cats were treated the way rodeo animals are used, those responsible would be facing felony-level charges. Let us join with cities in 9 states and many foreign countries and ban rodeos. I realize that this year's rodeo is probably a fait accompli, but I urge you to eliminate the one event not performed by rodeo professionals this year. That is the corporate calf dressing contest where, to quote your brochure, it's a kick to see these city slickers try to put clothes on a calf. According to the Shark website, quotes, after completely stressing, exhausting, and dominating the young victims, the abusers forced them into human clothes, often women's underwear. Think for a moment how your pet would react if a group of strangers swooped down on him and forced him into clothes. I submit that the fear a calf experiences would be all the greater, as it's unused to benign human contact. I'm certain that I'm not the only citizen of Goodyear who would think twice about patronizing a business associated with this event. In your hearts, you know that animal abuse and exploitation in rodeos is wrong. Please act to protect rodeo animals by banning future rodeos in our city. I found that the rodeo provider here is Honeycutt Rodeo, and I Googled it, and there was a hard copy expose. They did 2 programs actually on the cruelty in the Honeycutt Rodeo, where there's, if you go to the Shark website or even just Google Honeycutt Rodeo, you can see a video where animals are definitely being abused. And I think that when hard copy confronted these people, they became very abusive on national TV. I think that the calf dressing is supposed to be benefiting the New Life Center, and I think it's ludicrous that we're abusing animals to help abuse women and children. I think that we should rethink that. I think that I would ask that for this year you ban the calf dressing and also ban electric shock and bucking straps from the rodeo, and hope that in future years we won't have rodeo in Goodyear. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I understand the event producer and stock contractor may be here. If so, just raise your hand, please. Okay, thank you. Is it asking too much if you would meet with Ms. Mason offline right now, and then next week you prepare a report on the status of this? We can't, this is not an agenda item, as you know. Okay, then you won't. I was advised that that's what you wanted to do. I was wrongly advised. Okay. Can you report back to us next week on this status?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Is that all right? And you'll get the report. And if you don't like it, you let us know. Okay? All right. Any other comments from the public?
I don't have any other speaker cards.
Okay. We'll now move to consent agenda. Item 7C is being pulled, and that will be on the February 25th agenda. 7C is pulled. I'd like to ask the city clerk to read consent items A, B, and D through E by title only, please.
Approve draft minutes of a work session held on January 7, 2008, and a regular meeting on January 14, 2008. B, approve the assignment of the pre-annexation agreement dated February 14, 2006, between the City of Goodyear and Standard Pacific of Arizona, Inc., to Pradera Partners 160, LLC, regarding the development of 160 acres known as Pradera, generally located at the northwest corner of Citrus Road and Lower Buckeye Road. Item D, adopt ordinance 08-1104, amending Article 9-8 of Chapter 9 of the Goodyear Code of Ordinances to revise Section 9-8-6B3 regarding the method for calculating development fees to be imposed on new non-residential development, providing for separability and providing for an effective date. Item E, approve a request from Lucila Gulen, representing Los Palmeras Restaurant, for Series 12 liquor license number 120777450 for Los Palmeras Restaurant located at 1088 South Litchfield Road.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone in the public wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Would anyone on council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, could I have a motion, please?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve consent items 7A through 7E, excluding 7C.
7A through E?
Yes, sir.
Excluding C. I have a motion from Councilmember, Vice Mayor Antoniak, and a second from Councilmember Osborne. Could I have roll call, please?
Councilmember Sousa.
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalier.
Aye.
Councilmember Lord.
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Antoniak.
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Okay, thank you. We'll now move to the business part of our agenda. We'll start with a request to consider authorizing the purchase of 8 heart monitors. Paul, you're up. Thank you.
Good evening. Just need to. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. About a year ago, our current maker and model that we carry, the Medtronic Physio Control Monitor Defibrillator Pacer, was suspended from its current production. So in that time span, we've looked at possibly upgrading our current monitors to new ones because of this delay in shipment or stock shipment from the FDA. And with the advent of 187 and also Fire Station 185, we've been kind of painted into a corner not being able to purchase new defibrillators. And certainly this is a big part of our process that we do almost every day with the paramedics and EMTs, using this as almost a very vital piece of equipment in the day-to-day operations. Almost 80% of our call volume actually requires us to bring this monitor, defibrillator, pacer on calls. As part of the new protocols that have been accepted by the West Valley Fire Departments, this piece of equipment will now need to transmit 12 lead EKGs into the hospital so that we can actually reduce the amount of time that it takes to get a patient from the field into the hospital and then eventually onto the cath lab. The goal is 90 minutes from the time you arrive at the hospital. Recently, the American College of Cardiologists has asked that that time frame now be looked at from the influx of the 911 call. So now we're essentially under the gun or under the stop clock to transmit now a EKG from the field to the hospital so we can get the patient there faster and subsequently get care to save their lives. So in July, we found some money to be able to upgrade our machines so they can transmit the 12 leads. And unfortunately, Medtronic told us at that time that they would be unable to service this and provide these upgrades for us. So again, we're painted further into a corner. In October, we did a field trial of this Philips monitor, this red one to my left, and we field tested it for about a month. The guys and gals that are using it in the field really enjoyed using it. They enjoyed the technology, and it also gives us all the abilities that we need that this Medtronic machine does no longer offer us. So because of the stop shipment and because of the reduced amount of essentially things that this can now provide for us, we need to go look for another vendor. So we found Philips. We've actually been able to negotiate a price through the Phoenix Fire Department. They just recently purchased, I believe, 160 of these, as well as the Glendale Fire Department at a reduced cost. So the savings is significant per machine, about $10,000 savings per machine. But essentially now this has become the Cadillac of monitor defibrillators and pacers. We'd like to replace our current fleet that we have here and replace them with all Philips machines. One of the biggest reasons we want to do that is at 3 o'clock in the morning, you can certainly see the difference from just standing here looking at it, but the technology that's behind it is pretty significant. We would not want anyone at that time in an emergency crisis, even though they are professionals, to be able to make quick decisions and kind of bounce back between each other. So essentially what we're doing is coming to ask for the remaining balance. We've been able to take some with the help of Lisa Nagel and Heather Grenio and Chief Gaylord. We've been able to identify some of the money that's in our current budget. We approached Deputy City Manager Nichols and City Manager Dalkey to help us, And essentially what we're doing now is asking for $30,000 to help us complete this transaction and overhaul our entire fleet.
And the total cost is not 30. Would you tell us the total cost?
The total cost, I believe, is $135,000.
Okay.
Total cost of the machines, $135,059.46.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, could I have a motion, please?
Mayor, I move that we authorize purchase of 8 heart monitors for the price of, as stated, $135,059.46.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Cavalier and a second from Vice Mayor Antoniak. It's open for discussion. Councilmember Souza?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Paul, were there any other firms that you tested besides this one?
Currently on the market right now, there is one other vendor, Zoll, and we did not test those. We were looking to try to keep some compatibility between the cities. As you know, with the automatic aid, we're always going to different cities. And most of the other cities are running with the Philips, so we wanted to have some continuity of care there, so there was not a delay in taking over patient care from another city if that happened.
No, these are going to be disposed of. Is that the idea, or are you going to keep those on staff?
They would be traded in. There's actually a value down on the bottom of the first page. They're going to give us $28,000 for our current models on a trade-in.
Are they going to be used now?
They'll probably be sold back out on the on the secondary market.
They're usable, aren't they?
They are usable. Unfortunately, they can't be upgraded to the standards that we need for our protocols.
Thank you, Paul.
All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. While Paul's getting ready, Romina, we'll now consider adoption of resolution for the legislative agenda of 2008. Romina Cortez will present.
All right, this is my first time using this, so just don't laugh at me if I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to talk to you tonight about the legislative agenda. Usually, or at least hopefully in the future, I'll get this to you earlier. This year was just a little bit difficult for me to get this all organized and ready before the session started, but we're not too far into the session. We are in the second regular session of the 48th legislature, and it started on about 2 weeks ago, so we're not too far in. Most of this stuff that we've been discussing down at the legislature, as you can expect, is based on the current fiscal budget. JLBC, which stands for the Joint Legislative Budget Committee, and OSPB, which is the Office of Strategic Planning and Budgeting, that's the Governor's Office of Budgeting, forecasted an FY08 budget shortfall of $1 billion. So that's currently what they're faced with. And we're looking at $1.8 billion for 09. So this is going to be a huge year in defending our budgets all around for everybody across the board. There's not really too many people advocating for anything. It's more like just go down there and protect yourself. The legislature convened on January the 14th. The Republican majority is in both houses. On the west side, from West Valley legislators, we have 3 that are in leadership, and that's Senator Blendu, who's the Senate Pro Temp, Speaker Wires, who's the House Speaker, and then Tom Boone, who's the House Majority Leader. So we do have some leadership positions from the West Valley representatives. Blendu is our district representative, and I have great relationships with both Wires and Boone to help us out with that. I'm just going to go through kind of what I did this year, and this may be a little different than what you've been used to. Because this is such a defensive year, and really I need you guys to approve some guiding principles for me to work by. I didn't really go into detail about any specific bills that are out there yet. We, as the City of Goodyear, don't have anything that we're proactively going to try to get passed. What we're doing is we're working with the League and the other cities and MAG in our efforts to really just go through some protection. That's really what we're doing. We may have some transportation efforts, but there's nothing concrete yet for me to bring to you. So I'm just going to go through some guiding principles, and these are the this is so that I'm able to maneuver this legislative session kind of freely back and forth depending on what bills come forward, what issues we're faced with. They'll have these principles that you guys have set for me to go ahead and be able to work within those. So there's, I think, 7 of them: fiscal sustainability, local authority, economic development, military preservation, public safety, transportation, and then, of course, our neighborhoods. So for fiscal sustainability, we just want to make sure that we're protecting our shared revenue. Currently, the budget that the governor has proposed in '08, which is the current year, protects our shared revenue and holds us harmless of all the any kind of cuts that could have come forward. And she does the same in '09. However, the legislative budget, although it's nothing concrete, of course, just always understand this is going to change. The legislative budget does not protect our shared revenue, does take into effort cutting some points off of our percentage, and then it does not protect our highway user revenue funds, which is HERF, which is the other part of the sustainability. The governor's budget does do that. She protects HERF as well. And then we go on to protecting the local transportation assistance funds, and then any other areas of funds that are affected by the budget cuts. So that's my fiscal responsibility, just kind of those guiding principles to go through and make sure that those areas are protected. Those are our funds that obviously are going to hurt us if they are taken away. So those are the main points on the fiscal effort going forward. The local authority and economic development. Local authority, you know, the state is always trying to preempt us or trying to put mandates on local government to do whatever it is they dream up. You know, and a great example is sign walkers. Every year the sign walker issue comes up and they try to preempt us from doing that. So things like that. So you want to continue to protect our local control under situations like that, regardless of the effort. You know, if it's preempting the city or if it's mandating us to do something, the general stand is to not support something like that. In economic development, the effort is to oppose any attempts to limit Goodyear's ability to execute, you know, any kind of economic development projects. The one thing that comes to mind this year is obviously the GPLET, which is the government property excise lease tax. And that is under attack. There is a legislator who has been studying this for about 2 years and can definitely speak to it a lot better than I can, but on the opposite side. And he is looking to take that ability away from the cities. The league does have representation at that table. We are giving the league the information that we need from our local governments and our, you know, finances. They do have there's no compromise, but Mr. Nelson is the legislator who's a good friend of ours and in our district is working with them on that. So hopefully, you know, it'll be meeting after meeting after meeting and nothing will come forward this year, but just know that that is going to be under threat, and there may be a time I come back to talk to you about that in more specific detail. Military preservation and public safety, of course, our mission is to always protect the Luke Air Force Base and to make sure that we're, you know, locally working to protect the base from any encroachment issues. And then on the public safety end, you know, there's a lot of, just like with us, public safety is always under attack on a yearly basis, especially in the 911 fund. The legislature has been known to sweep those funds year after year to balance their budget. That's obviously very important to us. And then the second thing is also pretty much just making sure that they don't have them, the state doesn't mandate any things on our public safety, police and fire that they're not able to do, or it would hit them budget-wise or any other way, you know, manpower-wise without discussing with the cities first. So a perfect example of that is, you know, the sanctuary stuff that's happening through the city of Phoenix of making our police officers ask for identification and stops. We just need to make sure that when that happens, the cities are at the table and our chiefs of police know that this is happening and they have a say in how this gets done and how it affects our funding and you know, where those mandates come from. And the transportation neighborhoods, obviously, you know, the city of Goodyear has always been a big supporter of regional as well as statewide efforts in transportation. This is going to be a huge issue coming forward this year and next year and probably for the next few years. But the governor does have a special place in her heart for transportation this year, so I think that in the next year or so we're going to be hearing a lot of this. We are actually going to be in the center of this, at least for the rest of this year, as our mayor chairs the Maricopa County Association of Governments, and that's, you know, the transportation arm for the region. So I may be coming back to you on issues on transportation more specific. There's nothing out there yet. There are a lot of transportation bills that have been dropped, but they are, I think, placeholders for discussions, as that's going to take definitely compromise. And then our neighborhoods, we just need to make sure that we work at the legislature to preserve and enhance the quality of life for all of our citizens, which so far they haven't attacked us too hard. So I think that's pretty much overall. Those are the guiding principles I'd like you guys to just think about. If you have any questions, like I said, we don't have anything specific yet, but those kind of give me the idea of how I can go about and do my work.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Opportunity for anyone from the public to comment? Okay, should I have a motion therefore to adopt the resolution? Okay, I need it read. Ask clerk to read the resolution. Thank you. By title only, please.
Adopt Resolution 08-1217 to be proactive and involved in the state governmental decision-making processes directly affecting the city legislative priorities identified in the City Council Action Form Report and the Arizona League of Cities and Towns legislative priorities and providing for an effective date.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, move the council adopt Resolution 08-1217 as read by the city clerk.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Souza and a second from Vice Mayor Antoniak. It's open for discussion. Vice Mayor?
Romina, I appreciate your succinctness and giving you the ability to kind of have broad language to work with down there was a good idea. Different change of pace for us, but
Thanks.
Good idea.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Ronita, I was discussing with staff the number of hours you're putting in at the legislature. Can you tell the council how many hours that is?
It really does vary. In the past couple of weeks since, legislature started, I've been down there about 3 days a week, and that just depends on my meetings. It is a little bit heavier for me because the legislators have known me in a previous job, so I need to get down there and I need to reintroduce them to where I am. So I'm doing a lot of, reintroduction meetings, so that takes up a lot of time up front. I need to get in there and tell them where I am and what we're doing. And so I have been down there a little bit more than I should, but I think that's going to stay the pace because of the legislative session. And then in addition, the league has asked me to play a larger role. I guess they think I'm a veteran lobbyist. I have no idea where they get that from. But they're asking me to play a heavier role in helping them get through some issues down there. So I will be doing a lot of work more directly than the other cities will with the league. So that puts me in with a lot of hours. So I would say in the next couple of months, I may be down there 20, 30 hours a week.
I was amazed at the number of hours that you're putting in.
Yeah. It's a lot of work.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Cavalier.
Aye.
Councilmember Lord.
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Antoniak.
Aye.
Councilmember Souza.
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Okay, we'll now move to consider approval of a contract for services with HDR Engineering.
Just point of order, I'm going to recuse myself from this one. Most everybody knows I'm an employee of HDR, so I won't be involved in the discussion.
Okay, Lou Galbert. How you doing?
Hi, great.
Good.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. This is a request for your approval of a contract with HDR Engineering for the City of Goodyear Transportation Master Plan. The last City of Goodyear Transportation Master Plan was completed in 1987. With the explosive growth in Goodyear, and it's very important to plan a multimodal transportation network that will provide a framework to meet Goodyear's future transportation needs. This project will include the newly annexed Northern Valley area. In addition, it will also include the possible future annexation areas to the south. The community will benefit in the short term from a traffic signal timing recommendations that will be implemented as part of the scope of this project, and it will benefit in the long term from a well-planned multimodal transportation network. The total cost of the plan is $585,962, and the funds are available in the Public Works budget. Now I would like to introduce Brent Kane and Matthew Tonta from HDR, who will discuss their proposed approach to the project. And then Brent, Matthew, and I will be available for questions at the end of their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Brent Kane, HDR Engineering, 3200 Camelback Road, Phoenix. As everybody knows here, that the West Valley is experiencing tremendous growth. In the city of Goodyear alone, we're looking at currently 2005 population estimates of being about 47,000 people. That's estimated to grow to approximately 300,000 people by the year 2030. Employment information, similarly, 16,000 employees in 2005, with the estimates to grow to approximately 130,000 employees by the year 2030. With that amount of growth, it's imperative that a good quality transportation plan be used to make sure to accommodate this kind of growth. What we've done is actually broken this up, the city, into 4 unique areas, as we thought they were unique upon themselves. We have the northern area, the central area, Australian Mountain Ranch area, and the southern area that goes all the way down to I-8. Starting on the northern area, it's more built out as far as land use. The roadway system is essentially built out. The arterial system, however, intersection improvements could be needed or improved. There's also the issue of possible access from the industrial corridor west of the 303 to access the 303, and also inclusion of the park and ride study that's been recently completed. The central area, it's more of your economic hub. It's more of a factor of the multimodal component, looking at not only just vehicle traffic, but non-motorized movements with your city center there. Also looking at the river crossings, how that integrates with the freeway system. As development occurs further to the south, how to get that traffic to and from the north-south region. The Australian Mountain Ranch area, again, how the 303 lays into this particular area. Looking at the north-south connectivity, again, east-west capacity, as well as the further development of this particular community and how it impacts the rest of the city. And finally, the southern area, again, connectivity to the north and the central, as well as connectivity to Buckeye and to the east of the city of Maricopa. And what's also very important is the rail crossings. With the double tracking of the UP line, how safety issues can be a major concern on the arterial system. I've outlined some bullet points here, just more or less overall some approaches that we're looking at as far as developing the Transportation Master Plan, and I'll get in each one of these individually. Start off with the travel demand model. We would actually be developing a standalone sub-area travel demand model for the city of Goodyear. It would be very robust. You could use it for your own purposes of looking at, say, modifying improvements to the street system, how they would impact the street system. It would be coordinated closely with the MAG regional model. However, the MAG regional model is at a regional level, and so utilizing the City of Goodyear model, we'd be able to look a little bit more refined. Microsimulation modeling, again, we can look more at the intersection level and what improvement needs are necessitated. And using these tools, we can look at existing and future deficiencies to come up with recommended improvements as far as the City of Goodyear framework. What this shows is a travel demand model that we recently completed for the City of Scottsdale. Again, this is what we derived similarly for the City of Goodyear. What's shown on the left is actually level of service, green being good, red being level service F, where there's high delay and very slow traffic flow. What's shown on the right is your 2030 condition, and you can see there's severe operation issues that go in hand. And again, what drives this particular model is the land use. It's one of the components that is utilized in the travel demand model. Another important component of the plan is coordination with the regional efforts. the Hidden Valley and Hacienda framework studies, how that coordinates with the city of Goodyear, and also looking at your other agencies of MAG, DOT, ADOT, and the surrounding cities. Also looking at alternative analysis, not only from the regional standpoint, but from the sub-regional, looking at more of the local system, how that feeds and works within the city of Goodyear. What we'd actually look at is developing a base future network with noted, identified needs that have already been established, and then looking at how we can work with the roadway system to improve and make it better. And obviously, it's just not a vehicle plan, but it's also looking at multimodal options, looking at transit, looking at non-motorized, incorporating the airport, and also looking at the UPR. And with that, I'd turn over to Mr. Totten to talk about the transit.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I was going to talk a little bit about transit tonight. The bullet points here on the transit slide kind of correlate to our overall scope of work for the transit study. Now, the first step of any transit project is you want to document the existing and planned transit improvements in the region. So, and that's not exactly so straightforward in this area because there's a lot of there's very limited existing service, but there's lots of planned service that's going to be funded, or that's funded, that's going to be implemented in the future. Now, most of that service comes through what's known as the MAG Regional Transportation Plan. I'm sure you're all very familiar with it. It's a 20-year plan that was approved in 2004. There's a number of service improvements that are programmed for this area. Now, recently, MAG's also actually initiated a project which is called the Regional Transit Framework Study, and that's more of a technical-driven transit study that's actually going to be identifying potential transit improvements throughout the region with a longer horizon year past that of the regional transportation plan. So, for example, the RTP only goes out to about 2025. The framework study is going to extend well beyond that. So one of the things that we're going to be doing in this study is looking at what are potential transit service options for this community. And the nice thing about this master plan is actually ties in with the time frame of the regional framework study. So a lot of the input and the feedback we received during this, you're going to be able to directly apply into this regional study. So in terms of developing transit improvement options, there's really two sides to this. There's one is the service side, and then the other is the capital facility side. We were here about a year ago to present to you on the Goodyear Park and Ride project. That's an example of a capital facility. And just to give you a brief update on that, we're actually wrapping up our environmental process on that project. The environmental assessment is actually being circulated to the public as we speak. Wanted to talk a little bit about neighborhood circulator. That's one component of transit service options that it's been made clear to us is very important to you. Now, the way transit service planning works in this region is fairly straightforward in that most routes follow the grid network. So in other words, many of the routes that are going to be expanded in Goodyear or implemented in Goodyear are going to be expanded from Phoenix and other jurisdictions. Well, a neighborhood circulator is a little different because you need to build it from the ground up. It's basically going to be something that may be branded differently, have a different frequencies, span of service, fare mechanism. There's a lot of issues related to that. So that in itself is going to be one specific item as related to the transit plan. And then finally, we're going to come up with recommendations. And these recommendations will be based on a 5, a 10, 15-year planning horizon. And then we're also going to develop an action plan, so how you actually would implement these some of these transit recommendations outside of those improvements that are funded in the regional transportation plan. So transit technologies. There's a variety of transit technologies that we'll be looking at in this transit plan. Local bus is one. That's what you have today in many respects. There's a series of routes that operate through Goodyear on Van Buren and several other roadways. There's also express bus service. Express bus service is what's going to operate out of the Goodyear Park and Ride. Neighborhood circulators, we've touched on that. And then high-capacity transit is something that is now being constructed in the region for the first time as part of the Central Phoenix East Valley Light Rail project. But it doesn't necessarily just mean light rail transit. We're also going to be looking at commuter rail, which is really important for this corridor because there's an existing Union Pacific freight corridor that parallels I-10 through your city. So And finally, I wanted to kind of identify some overall transit issues and policies that we're going to be dealing with throughout the transit plan. These are things where we're going to need feedback from both you and the residents of Goodyear, in that there's a lot of different ways to approach this. For example, service standard. We're going to be looking at what's important to the city of Goodyear for service standard. What are the hours of service that you want, and what's the frequency that you would like to obtain? Service frequency versus service coverage. This is something that's really important to growing communities. Is it going to be a priority to you to actually provide bus service on as many streets as possible, or are you going to provide that on less streets but with a higher frequency of service? There's trade-offs that are involved in all these issues. Amenities, passenger amenities, it's fairly self-explanatory, involves things like bus shelters and perhaps a transit center. And then finally, overall connectivity. So how is Goodyear going to fit into the overall regional transit system? And that's a really key piece, because you really can't, from transit planning, you really can't look at it as a vacuum. You have to consider how the improvements you'd like in your city fit into the overall regional transit system. So.
Thank you, Matthew. The other component I want to briefly talk to you about is the stakeholder involvement. We'd also developed a stakeholder and public outreach plan at the onset of this study, and obviously coordination with the community development is important, particularly as the growth occurs to the south. The other component that we'd look at as far as the transportation master plan is the TIP, or Transportation Improvement Plan, which would be a prioritized system improvement needs. We would also incorporate 15% plans for 30 miles of road within the city of Goodyear. We'd also look at funding resources, and also we would incorporate the recent ITS study that the city of Goodyear has worked with. Our schedule is shown here. Identifies all of our work tasks, and we're looking at completing the plan by early '09 into this year. And with that, I open to questions.
Okay, thank you. Opportunity for the public. Any questions or comments? Okay, could I, let's see. Call for motion, please.
I move we approve a contract for services with HDR on the 073586 Transportation Master Plan.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Lord and a second from Councilmember Osborne. It's open for discussion.
You want to start?
Sure. Councilmember Cavalier?
Yes. Well, number one, in looking at this and further hearing the explanation, I don't see that we're getting our money's worth for $585,962, almost $600,000, to do a study. Some of the stuff that is pretty obvious, and the rest of it, I'm not sure we're ready for yet. At this point, I'm not comfortable with passing this. I can't, unless someone says something to convince me differently, I can't vote for this, because it's, we're not ready for this to begin with, and I don't see where many of these tasks aren't done by, oh, I'm sorry. I can't see that many of these tasks aren't already being done by our own people in our transportation department. So all I'm saying is, at this point, I just feel I'm against this, and I don't feel I can vote for it.
Okay. Councilmember Souza?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How long is this study going to go on?
12 months.
12 months? 1 year?
Yes.
You know, I feel basically the same way as my fellow councilman did. This is a tremendous amount of money for a study that's going to be run over a 12-month period. We have the involvement of ADOT, we have the involvement of MAG, we have MDOT involved in the studies, and I feel that we have enough information to carry our transportation's need for the present, okay? And I really realize where you're coming from for the future. But I don't, from a budgetary standpoint, I don't think that we can afford at this time $585,962 for a study that's going to run 12 months. I don't know what information you're going to get, your feedback that you're going to get from this council or from the citizens relative what they feel the transportation need of this council is going to be over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And I don't think anybody can foresee what's going to happen at that particular time. And to spend this kind of money at this particular time, this budget, and I'd like to ask this question to staff. You cite here fiscal impact. The $585,960 comes from four accounts. Identify those 4 accounts for me, will you please?
And Mayor, Councilmember Sousa, Councilmember Cavalier, the 4 accounts for that money are, we have
Take the $100,000 first.
that's the general fund that was allocated for the Transportation Master Plan.
And the $300,000,
That's transportation impact fees.
where does that come from?
Transportation impact fees, it was for, impact fees for development dedicated towards transportation. And that's the $300,000.
And the 116?
That is the transit, the last 2 accounts are transit accounts for the transit portion of the study. The LTAF money is the 116 for transit, and then the 70,000 is an additional transit account.
And where does the 116,000 and the 70,000 come from again?
The LTAF money for the Lotto, like the Powerball money that we receive for transit.
Well, that's from the state, basically. This is,
And I guess would be okay if I address the mayor, council members would be okay if I address the need for the study, since the question came up.
Okay, all right. I thought the 2 gentlemen addressed that, but proceed, certainly. Are you responding to Councilmember Cavalier?
Yes, sir.
And then we'll get back to Councilmember Sousa, okay?
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
The need for the study, I think, as opposed to what the regional MAG efforts and so forth, and the stuff the city staff is doing right now, is that for one, the MAG and the regional efforts don't really address the needs of Goodyear specifically, and how people are going to get in and out of Goodyear, and how Goodyear is going to connect to other communities, and in addition, developing a specific transportation model for Goodyear. Right now, city staff is getting plans for developments in, and we're trying to connect the lines, and we're trying to figure out how best to connect developments and how much right-of-way is needed and so forth to connect all these different plans that come in. But without a regional study to determine how these developments within Goodyear will connect, and how these developments in Goodyear and how Goodyear itself will connect to other agencies, it's very difficult for us to predict the right-of-way needs and so forth. In Goodyear, it's very difficult for us to predict right-of-way needs and so forth, and I guess the concern would be if you don't try to plan all of this out, you're gonna, you're gonna ask for right-of-way, you need to go back and get additional right-of-way later, and now if we can do kind of a build-out Goodyear analysis, hopefully we can identify the future right-of-way one time and not have to go back later and try to figure out how to make it work again.
Can I reply to that?
Yes.
Yeah, what I'd like to, in replying to that, what I'd like to add to what I said, and to further extend my thought on this, that is that the transportation system we need in this city is a system that needs to be developed by our developers and people who are putting this city together. And they need to come to the city staff and work with our people on city staff and come up with these plans, because we don't know where they're developing yet. And there are amendments to the general plan continually. Now, there's a plan for the way, just to give you it's a very small example, but it's an example. Estrella Parkway going south, there's a new high school built right there at the, on Estrella Parkway. Without knowing up to this point, there's a need for a stoplight at West Star and Estrella Parkway. We didn't know that until recently. So how can you predict these things to go further out than that when the development isn't even there yet? We're not even sure where those schools will be or where those shopping centers will start and end. And I just have a difficult time putting a plan together now without enough information from the developers and without enough input from them. And on top of which, they should be playing a very major role in working with the city on a partnership basis to put some kind of a transportation system in. The RPTA, with Proposition 400, which I'm on that board, does not address anything beyond Estrella Parkway, well, Pebble Creek Parkway, because it's McDowell. It will end at McDowell and Pebble Creek Parkway. And at that point, we need to be looking inward to our developers up north and the developers down south, how we're going to put this all together and come to the city and at least put some kind of an initial plan together, and then come together and say, well, we need to hire an outside consultant. But I don't think we're ready for that.
Okay, thank you. Let me run
Sure.
over. No, Councilmember Lord, Councilmember Osborne, and then back to Councilmember Souza. Okay?
I believe in comprehensive plans. The last time a city transportation plan was completed was 1987. I think what you end up is a hodgepodge. We have a pretty good idea of how areas are zoned in the city, and we have a pretty good plan of how we're going to develop this city. And I think this just supports it. And changes can already be made, but if you do it in sections with each of your developers and as you go along, you're going to end up tearing up part of it because it isn't a comprehensive plan. You're looking through you're getting a bird's eye view here of just a small area that you're talking about, Councilman. So I do believe you need the experts to give us a really good comprehensive plan. I think we have enough information to make that very workable.
Thank you. Councilmember Osborne.
Well, I have to echo what Councilmember Lord stated. Ever since I actually went to the Arizona Town Hall, which was on land use, a great deal was spoken about transportation plans, and at that point it was regional. But I came back from that conference and went straight to my manager and I said, we need to discuss this locally, and we need to be concerned about our rights of way, because we don't want to have a situation where, yes, I know we don't have a crystal ball to look into, but 10 years from now, we don't want to have a homeowner or a business that's very upset with us that we're asking to come in and condemn some rights of way to expand our streets, or for the sense of mass transit or light rail. I mean, those are things you have to look at for the future. And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I know we're talking crystal ball looking, but 20 years is something that you have to be looking towards, because it takes that long.
It's not a crystal ball
No.
to look at it.
And it's been 20 years since it was done. So, I know. As for being $500,000, I don't know if that's what those things cost. I'm still novice to that. But whether this flies or not, it's still something that our city needs to address.
Councilmember Souza.
I believe this rights of way that you were talking about earlier, rights of ways are really structured by the city planners and the developers. When we get a developer coming in with a piece of property, the roads are designed, okay, and they're planned out. The city has asked for wide roadways, rights of ways, and that's you can't ignore what the city planners and developers are doing currently and what they will do in the future. Prime example of that is what we're experiencing in Mojo. here's a developer that is putting in a highway, 236, paying for it himself, okay? We need it, there's no question about it, and he's giving access to the southern part of the state. I just can't vote through this.
Mayor, can I ask just one question? Can we address staff? How about staff standing up and telling us what this comprehensive plan does for you? Where that benefits our staff time, cost to the city?
I think Luke did that.
Not
You want
totally.
more?
Mayor, council members, I can tell you for the first year that I was on the Valley Metro Board of Directors with Councilmember Cavalier, it has been a nonstop fight over territory, where you get the money, where your service is going to go, who goes first. With the transit framework study coming and the governor's support behind it, I cannot begin to tell you how important it is that we engage in a global look at the city now, so that we know what we need to advocate when our opportunity comes at the Valley Metro Board to say what our citizens want. It's my understanding that the council is interested in neighborhood circulators. How big are they going to be? Are they going to be trolleys? Do people want neighborhood circulators? Where are those routes? Where do we need to get people to? Do they want to go to the stadium? Do they want to go to the mall? We're bringing some fantastic amenities here. But I still get phone calls from citizens who need to know how they can get there, and our resources are so limited. I believe this firm can do an excellent job of providing that global overview. The other thing is, one of the things that Proposition 400 did was take a look at the transit system as a grid, an east-west grid. Most of the service that's programmed in that study is going to go east to west, and we all know that our city is about 3 miles wide and a lot longer than that. So we need north-south service. And when Matthew talked about levels of service, well, do they want to get where they need to go on a bus, on a 60-foot bus, on a 30-foot bus? Do they want to go north-south? Do they want to go to other cities? Or do they want us to bring people here? And I think we need to provide those amenities to get people here. I think that's what our intention was in bringing all these fantastic amenities and resources to Goodyear, to make us known. And I think we also need to not look just within what we know today, which is fixed route buses and neighborhood circulators, which really are taking off. I can't begin to tell you the feedback I get from the other cities. This is how students get to high school in a lot of these cities. They're packed, and they can't keep them out on the street long enough. There's such a great demand for them. But then maybe there's more than that. Maybe there's other stuff that we haven't looked at. And I thought we were kind of on the edge, when we decided to go and get the universities and make them come here. Well, why can't we be on the edge of the transportation side, especially with a leader like the mayor at the regional council? So I have to say I'm a little passionate on this subject only because it has been a long time. And we do need to take another look at this, and I'm dying to get citizen input because we're operating on an assumption based on an opportunity that came along in Proposition 400, and we may not actually see that. We're a little concerned right now that that money is still going to be available when our service comes up, which may not be until 2018, 2020, and we'll need that service way before then. So on the transit side of it, I have to say I can't begin to tell you how exciting this could be for us to really know where people want to go and how they want to get there.
Chris, identify yourself for the record.
I'm the Administrative Services Manager for the Public Works Department.
Chris McMurdy.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to respond again, if I could.
Okay, let me take my turn.
Well, I'm sorry.
All right.
Yeah, I think the mayor should have a turn.
All right. Someone I think it was Councilmember Souza, referred to the project cost, and it says funds for the city's portion. Is there someone else who's providing funds other than this 585?
No, I apologize.
That's okay.
That's the city's funds.
No apologies.
Mayor.
That's all I need to know. Was this contract competed?
Oh, yes, it was. We followed the Title 34. We advertised the project. We asked for proposals from that. from that, we put together an interview panel that included 3 different departments in Goodyear: Public Works, Engineering, and Planning. We also included people from 2 different cities, Peoria and Avondale, that had recently completed similar studies to get a variety of input. From the proposals that were ranked, we determined the best cutoff line would be at the top 3 proposals submitted. So we interviewed 3 teams, and each of those teams gave a 20-minute presentation with a question-and-answer session afterwards. And from the interviews, HDR was the clear choice to be the firm selected for this project.
Okay, so great. You did go through the complete source selection process.
Yes, sir, Mayor.
There's no question that we need planning, Christine. I don't disagree, and particularly in the transit area. We have there's 6 framework studies being done across the state, 2 of which affect Goodyear. One is just completed, called the Hassayampa, and that covers all the way west to, if there were 500th Avenue, it would be about there, to Cotton Lane and Goodyear. And then the Hidden Valley is the southern part of Goodyear, and that's in process right now. So we don't know what that one's going to tell us. And the reconnaissance study done by MAG and ADOT is also nearing completion. But there's things we can learn from those studies and possibly save ourselves some money by incorporating the results of those studies into our own local planning. We are not now going to affect either of those 2 studies, but we can certainly learn from those, and they will talk right-of-ways for us, which refer really to the broad spectrum which you referred to, goes beyond the city, but the city is a part of these studies, and I think it's important to have those studies in hand before we spend a lot of money, and $600,000 is a lot of money. If it were another time, if it were 2 years ago, I'd probably like this idea. But over the next couple of months, we're going to be finding ways to cut. And if we're going to spend $600,000 in transportation, I'd rather put it in concrete or buses at this juncture. I just feel like we can do this, but we could wait until this fiscal year is ended. We can wait till this downturn is over. And I think we'd be in a safer position to plan this transportation. This isn't going to affect a single thing over the next couple of years.
So what is the time frame these studies will be assimilated, that
Well,
our staff will be
the
able to have?
Hassayampa is available now. The Hidden Valley, which is the southern Goodyear, should be available in June or July.
So these studies are ongoing.
They're ongoing, yeah. And they affect us, and I would agree with someone that we can impact them. But we're already doing that. Every developer is talking to the Hidden Valley folks, and they know more than HDR right now about what's going to happen in the southern part of the city. So that coordination is underway. It's not that we shouldn't plan. It's just that there's a lot of planning underway, and I'm concerned about over $500,000 for planning at this point in a fiscal year in which we're coming up short on revenues by at least $6 million, we think. So that's my concern.
You said, that's fine. Don't need to say.
You want to say something, I can tell.
Oh, you have certainly more information than I have.
But I agree with you, planning is crucial. But it's not at this point, I don't think.
So we need to hold it.
So if what you say is, I'm sure it is true with all these other studies, so these studies collected, given to your department, is that going to give you, is it within the time frame of what you think meets the needs of Goodyear? I mean, there's a lot of studies being done, there's a lot of things being done, but does it in fact, at that time frame, going to be worthwhile?
I am familiar with the Hassayampa and Hidden Valley. I know of them.
I can't hear you.
I am familiar with the Hidden Valley and Hassayampa studies, and I'm involved, or was involved in part of the reconnaissance study. I actually developed the sketch planning model for the entire state. And again, these studies that are at a higher level than what you need, they're looking at major arterials and greater this plan is going to be looking at your local system and greater. The framework studies are only looking at the framework. They're not looking at your specific needs. So with that in mind, it's important that you plan for your system and use these as input into your system. Ideally, you're in the best position right now because you have this information and you can use it, and the framework has been established. And you can now take this and refine it and make it better.
Well, and I see his point, Mayor, I'm sorry, because those framework studies aren't going to specifically state local issues. What our citizens need and want.
Can we define a local issue?
Well,
south
no,
of
as
Australia?
what she stated on what do they want to ride in? Where do they want to go?
Who's they?
Specific, well, as
That's the point. If you're south of Australia, who is
Okay.
they? Right now, it's 100 people.
I don't see a problem of holding it within 6 months to a year for these studies to come out. I mean, it doesn't have to be this evening as far as I'm concerned. So I can agree with you on that there are things to be learned, but I would not like to see it go beyond a year. I think this needs to, what they are proposing needs to take place, but can we wait another 6 months to a year for some of these other things to be established, then fine.
Yeah, another thing, the gas line road, we thought we'd have that approved by now. That's probably 18 months out for approval, and that's the only way we have to get south. So 18 months, we may have an approval for a road to be built in 2 years after that to get you to Mobile. We don't have to have this yet. We have to have it, but not yet. And there's not going to be any bus service from Mobile up here either for quite a while. We want it. I'd love to see PRT. I'd love to see you come up with that. But it's not now. So that's all I'm saying. This is not the time to be spending $600,000, I don't think.
So in a year, bring it back, let's discuss it.
All right, yeah.
That sounds good.
Okay, do we want to just table it?
I'll go with you.
Okay. Do I need to vote on that? Pardon me? Okay. Do I want to disapprove the motion, though? Vote no on the motion, or?
We've already got a motion.
Yeah, I know.
You can just put a motion, put it on, the table, and then it'll come back at some future date.
Can we table it with a time that we're going to consider this?
Table it to a future date. Bring it back at a future date.
That's pretty nebulous, but there's a trust factor here. I'd like to see this brought back within at least the next year.
How about bringing up end of this year?
Sounds great.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
So,
Just do an amendment to that motion, so we bring it up at the end of this year.
yeah, bring up this subject, table it, to come back to us at the end of this year. And we may know a lot more about the financial situation then, too.
Mr. Mayor, that was calendar year?
2008. Calendar year.
Calendar year, yes.
Okay, so I have a motion to table in a second.
I'll second it.
All those in favor of the motion to table?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's tabled 5-0. Okay. Okay, we'll now go to D and E. We'll vote on them separately, but Rick Williams will present them as one. Is that right, Rick?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and relate to the Australia Gulf Village Parcel 5-4, a PAD and a preliminary plat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. This is a request by Newland Communities to amend the 9.8 acre portion of the approved 1,200 acre Gulf Village PAD. Parcel 5.4 is located here on what would be the future West Star Drive, southwest of San Miguel Drive. Just for reference, this would be Estrella Mountain Parkway over here. Parcel 5.4 is surrounded by open space with hole 17, the 17th hole and the 18th tee located just to the south. The current designation for this parcel is open space. The amendment that's proposed before you this evening with designated as low to medium density residential 1 to 2 dwelling units per acre, which is consistent with the general plan. Parcel 5.4 is an undisturbed undulating area that is, as we've noted, located just north of the golf course. The applicant is proposing 8 single-family residences, custom homes on the 9.8 acre sites. Lot sizes will range from just over 1 acre to 73,000 square feet. Access will be provided via a private entrance off the future West Star Drive. Now, the zoning ordinance requires that 15% of the project be reserved for open space. The current Golf Village PUD has over 500 acres or 38% open space. Included in your staff report this evening are standards governing hillside development. I'd like to turn this over to Mr. Bob Coons right now, and he'll discuss those standards with you a little bit further.
Mayor, members of the council, very briefly, I know council members are interested in the past in some projects in Australia relative that have hillsides or moderate or steep hillside slopes. So I wanted to briefly talk about this particular project and what's being done in regards to designing and laying out the subdivision and the development of the custom home lots in consideration of those hillsides. As Rick mentioned, this property is bordered on the south by the golf course. Let's see if I can. Well, maybe a little hard to read, but portions of the property here has one small hillside area in the east, northeast, and one toward the west. These, what I would call moderate to steep slopes. Through our process working with Newland and their engineer, we first obviously look at the landform, the topography, 1 foot contours of the land, and that's all the lines you see on the plat map. The terrain, again, in this particular subdivision, there's one area on the east side that rises up, basically coming from here around this direction, and one small area to the west. These are not steep hillsides. Going from the road to the top of the landform in this area is 40 to 50 feet, although that's significant compared to our flatlands on the north side of Gila. Down this particular area, it's kind of a rolling terrain, but it has those 2 landforms. So through the process of review with Newland and their engineer, we first look at laying out the subdivision and the one street, and then ensuring that each one of the lots has a developable building envelope area for each of the custom home lots in consideration of the terrain. In doing that, we asked the engineer to prepare what we call a slope analysis map, which you see on the screen. On this map, this basically looks at the land area and the slopes. The areas in white are the 0 to 15% slope. 15% slope is in the yellow, 15 to 20, and the red is 20% and above. Generally speaking, the 15% to 20% is where you want to maybe draw a line and look at things much more closely relative to future development. In this particular subdivision, you'll notice that in the red, which is the 20% and above, these areas are being identified either in open space tracts or in a portion of a residential lot that cannot be built on. Each of the lots has a maximum development envelope that defines the limits of the custom home that can be built on that lot. Nothing can occur outside those maximum development envelopes. And generally that is consistent with the 15 to 20% line. In addition to looking at that, within those development envelopes, the city has prepared, in conjunction with Newland, a list of development criteria or standards for the custom homes to be built within those lots. That's included as a stipulation to the PAD and the plat. That basically would restrict the heights of cut and fill slopes for the house, restrict the height of retaining walls so they don't get monstrously high, provide revegetation of areas that are disturbed outside the development envelope, and other development standards to really address the custom homes that we build on those 8 lots. The next step would be is each one of those custom homes obviously goes through a city process of design review for each one of those custom homes, looking at the building architecture, the colors, materials, and its location on the lot. And then finally, in terms of the review process, Newland themselves has a very extensive custom home residential design guidelines that they administer through their architectural review committee that ensures construction of these custom homes in consideration of the hillsides. That concludes my remarks. I just briefly wanted to walk you through what staff has reviewed with Newland in conjunction with this moderate hillside development area. And Rick and I will be happy to answer any questions.
But the staff is supporting this.
Mayor, yes, staff is supportive of the request and recommends their approval subject to the stipulations on the 2 items.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant like to comment?
Mayor, City Council members, David Prescott with Newland Communities, 2850 East Calmac Road, Suite 300, Phoenix, 85016. I didn't hear any particular questions from City Council, so I'm reluctant to go into our presentation. I would like to point out just a couple of things. One is this road that you see along here, which is West Star Drive, is actually a public road that will come in as a connection for this overall West Star loop. I think it was referenced earlier about a traffic signal when it gets out to Estrella. But this public road is higher than the lots. The lots are actually lower than the public road. And what we've done, we've worked with the city staff to make sure that we're not doing any development on hillsides. We might sell some lots that include some hillside, but we don't allow development on those. And the plat restricts where those houses can go in relationship to where these development envelopes are, which are much, much smaller than the building envelopes allowed on the zoning ordinance. And Bob referenced our design guidelines. We have a design review committee, and when you come in and through and do a development for a custom home, you have to go through under the design guidelines for Newland. The house, you can't take a flat house and put it on a lot with topography and get it approved. The house has to be designed with the topography. If there's a wash, you have to build over the top or around the wash. If there's not cropping, you have to build around it. That's why it's a custom home and not a production lot home. So we have very tight standards on how they do that beyond what City Council approved. And also in our design guidelines, when somebody comes in, we've identified building envelope, and within the building envelope, they can have no more than 30% for overall lot, 30% lot coverage with the footprint of the building, another 5% for hardscape, and that's it, 35% total. All the rest of the lot has to be left natural, and any disturbance to do around the edge of the hardscape, they have to completely revegetate that. So I don't want to go on and on, but I know that hillside development is extremely important to Goodyear. We understand that. It is our personal corporate philosophy not to go build on hillsides, to not be messing up hillsides or ridge lines or anything else. And this is the way we'll continue to do projects out there. Okay. That concludes my comments.
Thank you. And there may be questions. Any comments from the public? Okay, then we're going to start with the approved planned area development. Amend that. Ask the clerk to read the ordinance by title only, please.
Adopt ordinance 08-1102, amending the approved planned area development for parcel 5.4 in Estrella Gulf Village on 9.8 acres from pad open space to pad medium-low density residential, generally located 1/4 mile southwest of the intersection of West Star Drive and San Miguel Drive, adopting supplementary zoning map number 07-005 to provide for the planned area development amendment, providing separability, and providing for an effective date.
Do I have a motion?
I move we adopt ordinance 083652 as read by the city clerk.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Lord and a second from Councilmember Souza. Open for discussion.
Now, this involves only 8 lots and 5.4, right?
Mayor, Councilman Souza, yes, 8 lots,
Okay. And they're custom homes.
and they're custom home lots.
All right. I appreciate the comments that were made by the developer about hillside construction. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
I just, was that the right ordinance number?
Pardon?
You
I was gonna
said,
say, that didn't sound like the
I
right
have
one.
081102.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I read the wrong one?
I just want to, sorry, that was my clarifying point there.
That should be clarified.
The motion maker may want to restate the motion as well.
1102. I'm sorry, okay, I adopt ordinance 081102.
Okay, clarification made and seconded. Okay. Henry?
Yeah, that was it.
Roll call vote?
Councilmember Lord?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Antoniak?
Aye.
Councilmember Souza?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalier?
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh?
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Rick, anything further on the preliminary plat? Okay, could I have a motion to approve the preliminary plat, please?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the preliminary plat for Stray Mountain Ranch Golf Village, parcel 5.4.
Second.
Motion from Vice Mayor Antoniak and a second from Councilmember Souza. It's open for discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, 6-0. We'll now move to the last item on our agenda. That's an ordinance to amend the approved planned area development for Astraea Phase 1, parcel 3.14. Rick Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a request to amend 14.42 acres of the approved Phase 1 PAD in Estrella Mountain Ranch. And just to give you a little orientation here, this is Estrella Mountain Parkway here, San Miguel Drive going this way. This is a future church site with the Echo Ridge subdivision here. We have an open space wash here with the Oasis single-family residential development. Open park space here and the Highland development there to the south. Now, the Phase 1 PAD was amended in 1988 and it designed the designated the parcels as PAD elementary school, commercial office, the church site above, as well as open space. Subsequently, the West Star Elementary School was built in an alternative location about 1.5 miles south of the proposed elementary school site. Through conversations with City of Goodyear Engineering, it was determined that because of the power line that runs through the southeastern portion of the development, that future access would be limited in this parcel. And it was not in conformance with the general plan. Now, the current amendment that you have in front of you this evening would redesignate this area as PAD patio home with open space here as well, and it would leave the church, the future church site intact. The amendment would designate this area as 4 to 6 dwelling units per acre, which is considerably less than the high to medium density 10 to 20 acres associated with the general plan. Now, the applicant has submitted, is not submitting a preliminary plat at this point. Contained in your staff report are conceptual development standards as well as conceptual elevations that they've provided for you this evening. We had a citizen review meeting on December 4th, 2007. There was no opposition mentioned at that point. I did have several telephone calls from residents calling in inquiring about this. There was no opposition voiced in those telephone calls either. There was subsequent discussion with regards to a traffic signal located, or future traffic signal located here at the corner of San Miguel and Estrella Parkway. It was noted in the staff report, and an additional stipulation has been added to the ordinance in which you have in front of you this evening.
Staff is recommending approval of this request, subject to the stipulations contained in your staff report. That concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the applicant? Any comments from the public? Okay, could I have a, let's see, we've got a ordinance. Ask clerk to read the ordinance by title only, please.
Adopt ordinance 08-1103, amending the approved planned area development pad for parcel 3.14 in Estrella Phase 1 rezoning 14.42 acres from pad elementary school and commercial office to pad patio home residential and open space, generally located at the northwest corner of Estrella Parkway and San Miguel Drive, adopting supplementary zoning map number 07-010 to provide for the amendment of the planned area development, providing separability, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the ordinance, please?
Mr. Mayor, move the adoption of ordinance number 08-1103, as read by the city clerk.
I'll second that.
Motion from Councilmember Souza, a second from Councilmember Cavalier. It's open for discussion.
Dick, how many homes does this involve?
I'm sorry, sir?
How many homes does this involve? You didn't indicate.
Well, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Sousa, we're capping it at the density of the project is capped with the rezoning. Because we're not platting it at this time, I don't have an exact number that I can give to you, but I can tell you that the density will be between 4 and 6 units per acre.
You know, there was I really have to go along with Commissioner Loretano in the P&Z Commission. I think the developer, Newland Industries, and I really feel that Newland Industries, because of the population in Estrella Mountain, are going to really have to consider commercial properties to service these people. I mean, they're having one little Kmart.
Market, the little market square up there.
Yeah, Market Square. Thank you very much. And that's the only facility they have for purchasing groceries and what have you. Otherwise, they have to travel all the way through Estrella Parkway to the shopping areas that we provide in our central area. And that's quite a distance for people to purchase groceries and other goods. So I would really plead with Newland to take this into consideration, because when the next proposal comes up for an ordinance, I'm going to look at it very, very closely. The only other issue I want to make is in the functional impacts concerning the property is the identifying Phoenix, Goodyear Airport, Luke Air Force impact, and so on. And as I look through the photos, I notice that there are electrical transmission lines involved in this property or near the property. And I would like to have that indicated as a potential concern.
Yes, sir. And Mr. Mayor, I believe Mr. Prescott would like to address that.
Okay.
David Prescott, Newland Communities, 2850 East Camelback Road, Phoenix. Commissioner Laurentano was very passionate about the commercial, and I pointed out to her, and I'll point out to the Councilmember Sousa, that any residential development that's going through approval now will be developed after the commercial comes in. We have the Bashes Marketplace, which is under design review with the city right now. And when they get approval for that, and then they go through construction plan review, and then they get a grading permit, they can go ahead and develop the property. We have recently sold 4 more commercial properties out there, and some of them are going through design review with us right now, but I'm not at liberty to discuss who they are or anything, because it's not my business. It's theirs to introduce to the public, not mine. And we're also in negotiations with some employers. So we have only been there a couple of years. And we completely understand. Part of the issue is we don't own all the commercial property there yet. We don't take some of that down until May of this year, so we can't sell property that we do not own. We can only sell what we own. So that's where we are at this point, and I think we're making very good progress, and it will come. The market's there. There's enough people there to drive the market. So, and I think the retailers recognize that. So that's all I can say for now, but I completely understand her comments and yours, and we're doing the best we can, but we don't actually build the buildings, so.
I appreciate your comments, Mr. Prescott.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Vice Mayor,
If I may, because I,
wait 1 second, Frank.
Did he address the issue on the power lines? Like you said, he was
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Sousa, we will see the preliminary plat again, or we will see a future preliminary plat, and we'll be happy to address those issues with that plat.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Councilmember Cavalier?
yeah, now, in regard to commercial at Estrella, there's two groups up there that have opposing thoughts on this. And I was hammered one time at a meeting up there about the fact that we've got commercial coming in, and we don't want commercial coming in here. We want we wanted to live out here in a place where there wasn't any commercial. So, and then you've got the other side, which most of the families who want commercial. So, the way it's set up now, everyone knows the commercial's coming. Everyone who lives there, and everyone is satisfied with the way things are. They're happy with where they live, and they seem to be very content to wait for it. And the fact that, yes, we'll get a Bash's grocery store, and we're going to get a Chase Bank, and those things are already on the board up there, and they're advertising those already. So in that little shopping center, there will be some commercial, and I think it will be just enough to take care of the needs of the people that are there, and not too much that will overwhelm some of the people who don't want commercial up there. So I just wanted to point out that we've got both sides of this thing.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, they're going to have to realize, okay, that the city is going to extend all the way down to I-8, and there's going to be construction between here and there. And those people are going to have a shopping area, as I pointed out earlier in the discussions with Newland Industries in their long-range plan, that we're going to have shopping centers here, here, and here, like oases, if you would, in that area, to accommodate the influx of residents.
That's true.
For their services.
I just wanted to comment on that so that we'd have a better understanding.
I appreciate it.
No, observing the comments at P&Z and as it relates to commercial and home development, Harvey, your group may want to have ACDAV come in, and Harvey, your group may want to have ACDAV come in and talk about the cycles, because the last thing we want to do if we're trying to establish a market is be counterintuitive and not put more rooftops in an environment that needs a grocery store, that needs an audience in which to sell groceries to. So I just, maybe it's a good time for some refresher on the cycle of the economic development stuff, especially given the downturn. The last thing we want to be doing probably is making it harder.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Antoniak?
Aye.
Councilmember Sousa?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalier?
Aye.
Councilmember Lord?
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh?
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Okay, thank you. We'll now move to information, comments, reports on current events by council members.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
We've seen some newspaper articles and pictures of graffiti in the city. And I'd like to just make this comment and ask and request the police department and members of our staff to declare war on attackers that are defacing our city with their idiotic configurations. Our residents should not be required to spend hundreds and perhaps thousands of dollars erasing their remarks and slogans from their properties. Let's get these punks into court where they will be heavily fined and assigned hundreds of hours in community services. At least the penalties imposed will provide them with free time, quote and unquote, they seem to have in destroying private property throughout the city. The confines of this city should not be confused with European cities where city officials seem to turn their backs on this degrading problem and the ghettos of some of our American cities. This is Goodyear, where we enjoy life and refuse to put up with damaging offenses. Whether these are individuals residing in our city or outsiders who cross our borders, when caught, you will be punished to the full extent of the law. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Is that your quote, or is that your comment?
That's my
comment. Is that your statement? Okay, Lynn? Okay. I thought maybe you'd received that. No, okay. Other, Councilmember Cavalier?
Yeah, this morning we attended, Christine and I attended the grand opening of the West Valley, or the West Phoenix new bus facility, and they even sent a picture. We've got the photograph of the people who were there. They misquoted me. They said I was the mayor of Goodyear, and I was attending it, but that was Phoenix. They don't know who's who. But the point is, there is a bus facility getting closer. It was on this new bus facility is on 79th Avenue in Van Buren, and it's a rather nice facility, over 10,000 square foot office space and garages. So I think it tells us that transportation is moving further west.
Okay. I just, a quick, sort of a heartwarming email I received today. I think everybody would enjoy hearing it. From an Estrella resident. My son just came back from a trip to Washington, D.C. as part of the district grade school science Olympiad team from West Star and Estrella schools. The team took a 9th place. He had a City of Goodyear pin with him when he came home. I asked him where he got it, and he said the mayor or the mayor's office. It wasn't the mayor, it was a person in the mayor council office. Gave them to the team, 20 students. I just wanted to pass along that the students really liked the pins and wore them proudly to the competition in Washington, D.C. So, that's great. Manager, summary of current events.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I have 4 items, and then also need to talk about follow-up right after that. First of those, after council took action tonight relative to the exclusivity agreement with the Cincinnati Reds, I snuck out and gave John Allen with the Cincinnati Reds a phone call. He was quoted once before as saying we knocked his socks off when he came to Goodyear, but this time he did share the excitement of the organization and looks very much forward to working with us over the next 75 days. So they are aware, and they'll eagerly work with us. Second item is we are receiving an award, and Larry, stealing your thunder perhaps, but press release from the Government Finance Officers Association out of Chicago. They have recognized, or pleased to announce, that City of Goodyear has received the GFOA, again, Governor Finance Officers Association, the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for its budget. The award represents significant achievement by the entity or the city, reflects the commitment of us and staff in meeting the highest principles of governmental budgeting. The entity had to satisfy nationally recognized guidelines, which there are 4. That's having a policy document, a financial plan, an operations guide, and communications device. So congratulations to the Finance Department for that. But I will not let Larry have a speech and follow up to that. The third thing is we did meet with development teams, 3 each for the city center. Each of them we met with an hour today with their teams, and then also the Performing Arts Center. Very good questions from those groups. They're all excited and eager to finish their proposals. March 10th, we'll have those proposals to us for the city center. And then we're working with the Performing Arts Center developer in their process right now. So all those meetings went well today. We had our full team certainly working with them. The last item, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, is just as a reminder, Dee Cockrum's retirement, our city clerk and city employee for 20 years, is this Wednesday. So we all look forward to wishing her a farewell.
1 o'clock or 3?
1 to 3, yes, sir, in room 117. But I also want to look to my right and recognize, although she's been recognized before, Our new city clerk, effective February 4th, will be Lynn Mulhall. So, Lynn, congratulations. And, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the one follow-up item I had made note of is we owe a report back to the council and certainly to Mrs. Ann Mason regarding the rodeo operations guidelines for humane treatment of animals. We'll also be working with the rodeo contractor, which is Honeycutt, and we'll be working over that the next week and get a report back to council and also to Ms. Mason. So that's a follow-up item that I had for tonight.
Okay, thank you. Opportunity now for any inquiries by council of staff. Okay, please adjourn.